Can you even believe I'm starting with a headline like this? I must have some sort of nerve, right? Okay, well, honestly, I believe with all of my heart that sugar should definitely, absolutely be a part of your life. And if you stick around, I promise I will tell you why. Hey, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm here to help you become a woman of wellness by healing your relationship with food, with fitness, and giving more love to your body. Today's video might actually be a little controversial because I am going to make a very bold statement and say that I don't think sugar is to blame for your feelings of food addiction, and more importantly, why I don't think you should eliminate sugar from your life, which often happens when we want to make a lifestyle change. Don't you usually say, oh, I'm going off soda, I'm going off sugar, right? So now, even though I say sugar, I want you to think of anything in your life that makes you feel addicted or like you can't really be around it because you feel out of control with it. So for some, this might be sodas, some others it might be salty things like chips, and for probably many of you as well as myself, it's probably some sort of sugar or carbs. If there's anything that feels like a trigger for you, instead of eliminating it from your life, I want to help you learn how to enjoy it in moderation. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about food addiction, because I made a bold statement and I want to make myself very clear because I know it's a sensitive subject, and although I'm not going very deep in this video about food addiction, there are certain times in life and certain foods that may make you feel like you're addicted to food. Like maybe you can't get enough. You go look for it everywhere you go. You use it to deal with anything and everything. And while there are tendencies for addictive behaviors, it's very likely that you're probably not dealing with a true food addiction, although if you do feel like it is completely beyond your control, please, please, please go seek out assistance from a professional counselor. They will be able to help you much more than me. But I want to tell you why I don't think it's a food addiction. So yes, it's true, eating sugar makes us feel like we want more sugar. And yes, it is also true that there's a link to eating more sugar and wanting more sugar. That's true. However, in general, food, all kinds of it, is meant to be pleasurable. Eating food, any kind of food, elicits a dopamine response in our brain, which allows us to feel pleasure. The reason we feel as though certain foods trigger a food addiction to us is not always because of that biological response. There are usually two reasons we feel addicted to food. The first is because we use food to deal with our emotions. And how many emotions do you have each day? Because I have at least 10,000, right? As women, we probably have a lot of emotions that go in our brains all day long. And I know all about them. And then if you have kids, you're dealing with all of their emotions from infant to toddlerhood, and then you have teenagers. I don't even know what to do with teenagers. Someone's gonna have to help me when I get there. So maybe we should increase that number to what, like 100,000 emotions a day? Anyway, when you use food to deal with your emotions, it can feel like you're addicted to that food because you're constantly feeling emotions. When you're stressed, you're tired, you're sad, you're lonely, you turn to food. And you probably turn to those trigger foods, right? Those sweets, soda, salts, those foods that you would consider off limits. The second reason you may feel addicted to certain foods is because when you restrict a food, the desire for it becomes so much stronger. Have you ever experienced that again? I want to say it again. When you restrict a food, the desire to eat it becomes stronger. When you allow yourself to go hungry, you're in a deprived state. When you're deprived, what do you want? Well, I want sugar.
What's on your hand?
Sugar, sugar, sugar. Everywhere.
Everywhere.
In fact, I want to explain this point a little better by citing a rat study, a good old rat study, I guess, which I saw a rat in my backyard the other day, and I can't even say the word rat without getting like all the tingles and shivers up and down my spine. It was so disgusting. Anyway, researchers took a group of rats and divided them based on how much essentially food and sugar they had available to them. And I'm not going to go terribly deep into the details of the study, but the important point for right now is that the rats that ended up wanting and eating the most sugar were not the ones that were actually given the sugar directly, but the rats that were hungry. The rats that were deprived of food and nutrition were the ones that were more ravenous for the sugar. Here's another very famous study about men during World War II. 36 men voluntarily signed up to help researchers study starvation specifically and how to help people heal from being starved. They went from eating normal amounts of calories each day to severely restricting calories for a period of time. These men suffered some serious, as you can imagine, physical, emotional, and psychological effects. But the effect on how they started to view food is seriously so fascinating to me, and it can help us understand why deprivation has more consequences than just, say, physical consequences. So I'm going to quote from the study here, okay? Hunger made the men obsessed with food. They would dream and fantasize about food, read and talk about food, and savor the 2 meals a day that they were given. They reported fatigue, irritability, depression, and apathy. And that's not all. When they went off the starvation diet, one of the group's calories was increased incrementally a little bit at a time, and the other group was given free rein to eat whatever they wanted. In the unrestricted rehabilitation group, so the ones that could eat whatever they want, many of the men engaged in, quote, extreme overeating. Okay, so now I know that this is an extreme example. I do still want to spend a minute thinking about that. Every time you're on a diet where you feel deprived of either calories in general or not being able to eat a specific food that you love, what's the first thing that breaks your diet? It's usually first indulging in the food that you couldn't have on the diet, and then indulging in anything else that you can get your hands on, because you're essentially making up for all of those lost calories. And you probably go for the brownies, the cookie, the candy, the soda. It's sort of like being a kid in a candy store, actually. Except unlike kids, we usually experience a lot of guilt after, right? So let's recap the 4 reasons that I think you should keep sugar in your life and how you can enjoy it in moderation without feeling completely overboard. First, all food is meant to be pleasurable. Second, eating sugar will not lead to a food addiction. Third, restricting leads to overeating. And fourth, allowing all food invites balance. So I have a challenge for you. I want you to take a minute to think about all the foods that you've been restricting in your life or on a diet plan. What are those foods that are considered off limits for you? I want to give you permission to do something kind of fun. In fact, I want you to give yourself permission to do something. Give yourself permission to eat it all. For real, I'm not kidding you. I know you're like, no way, I will go crazy, I can't do that. You might, but remember what I said about the research. The ones that were deprived ended up eating more than the ones that had everything available to them. So I want that to be a hint. When you allow yourself all foods, you allow for moderation. Can I say that one again too? Because I think that's really good. When you allow yourself all foods, you allow for moderation. Give yourself permission to eat what you want. Yes, I know you might feel crazy at the time, but over time you will begin to find the balance and all of a sudden realize that you don't need to put any more foods on your off-limits list. Really, truly, doesn't that sound so heavenly? You are so beautiful and strong and powerful, and I know that you can have a happy relationship with sugar. So, excuse me while I go eat a cookie because all this sugar talk is making me hungry. I'm trying to wink, but it's not working.